because dance starts with a balancing swing. So I wanted to end with a balancing swing. So I will remind you of one more beat. Previous beat. Okay.
So this page.
Just the first one.
Just the juju.
Yes.
So here we are at the Randy Miller Retrospective. We have Randy playing. Along with Natalie Backus and Bruce Rosen, and all kinds of people sitting behind, wonderful musicians. All the tunes will be Randy Miller tunes. So, have some lively notes flying this stage. So, looks like you can all fit nicely into this one circle. With your partner, balance and swing. And take your partner in promenade, that's counterclockwise around the room. And hang on to that left hand you have with your partner, and all the ladies face into the middle of the circle, all the gents face out. Give a right hand to the next. Everybody there? Good. Balance in that wave. Allemande right halfway. And you've got a new wave with all the ladies facing out, gents facing in. Balance. Allemande left halfway. With the next one in your right hand, balance, drop left hand, so you're going to hurt yourself, and box the net. So, ladies, you are facing that person. Ladies facing clockwise around the circle, gents facing counterclockwise. 4 changes of right, left. Pull by right, pull by left, pull by right, pull by left with the next balance and swing. And that's where we're going to start the dance. But why don't you go back to your original partners and get to balance and swing once with the one you asked.
Nice
The dance called Retrospective by Bill Olson. The tune by Randy is The Queen of Sheba Departs. No, The Queen of Sheba Arrives and then departs. No, just arrives.
Just the rise and then it changes.
Okay, we're going to start with The Queen of Sheba. With your partner balance and swing. C. And once you find a partner for the next contra, line up and then you'll be all set when we get to dancing.
Man, that was a million years ago. That may have been the last time I was on stage with this guy.
Yes, it's on. So far, so good. Welcome to the retrospective for Randy Lillard. He has been described as a New Hampshire treasure. He's a fiddler, he's an artist, he's a historian. That's very important, and a preservationist and a teacher. And you probably hear about all those things from a couple of our speakers. You might, if you're really nice and we have time, you might even hear about another fiddle player we visited who could play mysterious notes and you didn't know where they were coming from. Or a coffin factory, a dance in a coffin factory. Was any of you here at that dance? Nobody? Alan McIntyre was there at that dance. So we'll see. What else? There was something else, mystery.
It was amazing.
Yes, it was. Thank you. So, first I want to introduce a fellow musician who knew Randy before he even moved to New Hampshire and was playing a slightly different sort of music. And he wants to talk about that history. It was around Cambridge, Mass, right? Yeah, so this is Ken Siegel. He's played a lot for dances up in Maine. He played with us a lot at Helsinki.
Got a few notes here. First I would say, a lot of you don't know this about Randy, but he gets up every morning at 4:30 a.m., goes over to his bedroom window, opens it up, and climbs in. Seriously, over half a century ago, I met this guy at a music festival in New York, Fox Hollow Festival. And I was just getting interested in old-time music, Appalachian style music, and I heard a fiddler guitar player off somewhere on a side trail, playing these great tunes, all the old standbys, Mississippi Sawyer and Ragtime. I said, wow. And there was Randy with his brother who looked like the old movie Ichabod Crane. And, just playing away. And that's what I wanted. I was just starting to learn to play fiddle. And we got to be friends and kind of hung out throughout the festival, and we exchanged addresses. And oddly enough, it was in this city. I grew up here in Worcester. And oddly enough, I got a letter a little later, early fall maybe, from Randy, saying, hey, we met at Fox Hollow and da-da-da. And of course, the Vietnam War was going on then. I had just got out of the service after applying for a CO in the service, conscientious objector. And Randy recently graduated college, and to avoid the draft, he went through all the paperwork and applied for a CO, and he had to do so many years at service, 2 years of service. So he wrote me a letter and asked if he could come and stay at our house in Worcester. I was living with my parents at the time. And well, he went into Boston to look for a job and a possible place to live. Although I think at the festival, Bill Staines, do any of you remember Bill Staines? Well, Bill Staines offered to Randy that he could stay at his place for a while until he found a place of his own. But Randy needed a place to do his service work, and he found a job, I think, at Beth Israel Hospital. So we got to, I eventually got out of my parents' house, moved to Cambridge, and moved to Boston area, and there were these parties, picking parties at the Harvard Freshman Union. Did you go to those at all? The picking parties at the Harvard Freshman Union?
Yeah.
And and so, we used to look forward to those, and then there was old Joe Clark House. And somehow, we all got together, and we decided we would drive. We used to do these long road trips to West Virginia and North Carolina to hear Appalachian, good old Appalachian music. And there was one time I recall we went down, and I had an old tape recorder, an old real tape recorder. I was making field recordings of all these old fiddle players. And we met up with this old fiddle player by the name of Franklin George. And I think he kind of turned us on to Irish music, because we were recording him off on the side somewhere in a field, and he said, I'm going to play some old, this is an old Irish tune. Played a couple old tunes like that, and mentioned some names like Michael Coleman and stuff like that. And it really intrigued us. And on the ride home, we were listening back on the tape of him playing. He was playing one tune. We couldn't figure out that he said the name. We asked him afterward, what's the name of the tune? And he had this heavy southern drawl. He go, Folder. And he kept rewinding the tape. In the car, he kept rewinding that part of the tape, trying to figure out what the hell the name of the tune was. I think Randy finally figured it out. He asked around Boston, and finally, learned the tune. And he said, yeah, that's Carol O'Hara. And Randy finally found a place up on Beacon Hill. It was like this 5-floor walkout. And being the frugal man that he is, he didn't have a telephone. And if you wanted to go visit him, you had to drive from Cambridge over to Beacon Hill and see if there was a light on 5 floors up. You knew he was home. And if you wanted to pick him up and go somewhere, like to Charlie's Barf and Pail out on Mass Ave. Remember that? Charlie's Beef and Ale House? We call it Charlie's Barf and Pail. But anyway, Jack would be driving, or I'd be driving, and we'd get up on the hill, and I'd have to double park, and Jack or myself would run up 5 flights of stairs, and I knock on the door to see if he was home, and come on, we're going out, we're going to go play music or do something. And those were the days before cell phones and all that kind of stuff. And but I think Jack and Randy kind of hit it off. They were very good athletes. Randy being a star basketball player at Oberlin College, by the way, and Jack being a star baseball player for Harvard. And that's true. It's true. He was scouted out by Cleveland. All right. Well, anyway, they hit it off because they liked the athletics and stuff, and they started pursuing the Irish music stuff. And we heard, we still like the old-timey stuff. We heard this old-timey fiddle player who would play up in New Hampshire about every month for these things called contra dances. This old-timey fiddler was Alan Block. And we thought we'd go up and listen to Alan, and I brought up my tape recorder and sit on the side. And there was this guy by the name of Dudley Walken who called, and he called dances, in Francistown. And we'd go up on the Saturdays, and when we get home back to Cambridge at 2 or 3 in the morning, because inevitably afterwards. And all kinds of great old musicians were there, and Randy was in demand because he exceptional guitar player, exceptional piano player. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted to play the fiddle. He was getting tired of backing everybody up. He wanted to play the fiddle. And he became one heck of a fiddle player, too. But after a while, we started pursuing the Irish music, and we really liked the Irish music, and after a while, things, we were going to every single dance there was up in New Hampshire. And then Randy I remember the time, it was a good time. Randy bought an old, was it a 1940-something or 50-something, the ambulance.
1950 Pontiac ambulance. Okay.
1950 Pontiac ambulance. And thing would barely make it over Pitcher Mountain. And we were behind, we had to keep the RPMs up. We were behind some Volkswagen that couldn't quite make it up. And much to Randy got pretty upset with me when I flicked on the flashing lights. They pulled over and we couldn't pass. But anyway, all right, I got the hook here. So anyway, we broke away from some of the New England tunes. Jack started his own dances and started to put the Irish flavor to the tunes, to the dances, different tunes to the same old dances. And it was very, very refreshing. And Randy was playing fiddle, and he was also composing, and they got together and put out the fiddle tune books, the Irish fiddle tune books. One thing led to the next. And so, thanks for being here, Randy. I want to thank you for your music, your artwork, and most of all, thank you for your friendship.
Randy, what do you want to play?
We got a set of marches on you.
Marches. Okay, I got the marches. So I picked the dances out.
Randy sent me a list of tunes, and then I picked the dances to the tunes, but I don't know what order he wanted to do them in. So, the marches.
Okay.
Let's get into Beckett formation.
Randy, is this how many miles to Boston?
Well, it's a simple.
Is it that,
It's a little bit different.
or is it Tour de Scotland?
We're doing simple gifts.
Yeah, it's not on that list. Don't worry about it. It's just
Don't worry about the list.
all the ones that's going to go with marches.
All right. Change of dance.
It's a treacherous place to.
Great. You're in Beckett formation next to your partner on the side of the set. Jen, Salamander left, once and a half around, and swing your knee. Now only if there is somebody on your left diagonal. Otherwise, just stay put. Ladies chain over there on the left diagonal, and this person is your shadow. If you didn't have somebody to chain with, you are standing with your shadow already. In your arms go forward and back. Straight across the set, pass through, passing right shoulders, stop, turn over your right shoulder, and single file circle. Oh, turn that into a circle left. Yeah, so in your foursome, circle to the left, go once around. And if you look past your shadow, you should see your partner somewhere down there, up there. Pass through, up and down, and with your partner balance and swing. by Gene Hubert. Stay right where you are. Stay right where you are. We'll start with these two gents with an Allemande Drive.
This way a little bit.
You're going to be able to hear very well anyway.
First we're on. Oh.
Allemande Drive. Swing your neighbor. Left guy, hold chin. Bring your arms up, forward and back. Roll your hand past through. Turn to your right. Single, front, circle left. Next door, circle left. Pass through, there's one, balance.
forward and showing videos herself. She's got something she wants to read to you. I'll tell these people to keep it short.
That's all I heard.
I'm delighted to honor Randy for his lifetime contributions to the world of traditional music and dance. As a friend, wife of 20 years, and co-parent, I've benefited from his music he created. The shared love of music and dance brought us together and is a lasting bond. One little story that relates to Ralph Page weekend is before we had kids, I can remember driving Ralph Page into Boston so he could call the bands. And it was quite a sensory experience to drive into the bands, filled the car with cigar smoke. But Randy and I met at a dance, and we also sort of both grew up with the love of the music and dance community. And our life together was sustained by his art. When our kids were young, they danced to the tunes he played on the piano. And the monthly dances in the church across the street were a big part of our social life. Sometimes Randy seemed to pluck a tune out of the air. I can remember a particularly haunting tune he was playing, and when I asked him what the name of the tune was, he just kind of woke up and, he was just playing it. And I hope he wrote it down. He has written down a lot of tunes, and as some of you know, he has a great collection of tunes that he's written. Music from Mill Hollow, which I highly recommend. So the community in East Alsted, where we made our home, included some elders with dance experience and young people enthusiastic about the revival of the music and dance. The potlucks and dances brought together our local community and the larger world of musicians and callers and dancers. So besides organizing the dance, Randy helped set up concerts, and often we hosted musicians in our living room and, for supper and good sessions. So the monthly dances really kept the home fires burning, and we thoroughly also enjoyed family adventures out to festivals and NEPA and Old Songs and other festivals around. So, I was just talking about how our community was brought together, and the dance community, and then our family, and some of our family is here. But Lynette, our eldest, sends this message from Chicago, where she's made her home. Randy's love language has always been music, acts of service, essay editing, and history lessons shared with humor and heart. I'm so proud of you, Dad. Thank you for the soundtrack for my feelings and my life. Love, Lynn. So, Randy is continuing to share this music with the local community in sessions and dances. May the dance go on. And here's my son, Will.
How's that? Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to share with you two stories today. The first, written by the composer himself, appears in the tune book Music from Mill Hollow. The second is a reflection on my childhood that I wrote for this occasion. In the first story, I am the young son accompanying an adventure with my dad. And he writes, "Over in Sharon, 30 miles from my home in New Hampshire, lived John Taggart, the fiddler. He was born in 1854, growing up to the sounds of his father and grandfather's Scotch-Irish fiddling. He moved away to Massachusetts as a young man and never returned. His folks died and the abandoned house rotted away. In the late 1980s, I took my young son with me to try to find the Taggart ruins in Sharon. I had studied town histories and pored through his autobiography for clues to the house site. We parked along Route 123 and struck off across the stone wall into the woods, into the pucker brush. My son was riding piggyback. The brush was too thick for him to walk. We trudged a quarter of a mile in, and it took us an hour. We reached the end of a stone wall, and I saw some lilac trees, a clue. We searched all around the lilacs for another half hour, fighting off mosquitoes, till we found it, a hole in the ground filled with leaves and ferns, but lined with half-hidden stone walls. My son and I danced a jig in Taggart's cellar hole." I still remember that, actually. My dad's interest in history, local and beyond, permeates much of his creative work. Growing up in our childhood home on North Road in East Hempstead, I thought it was perfectly normal to look closely at the walls and see horse tails poking out of the ancient plaster, or to have my view of the 150-year-old sugar maples in the yard distorted by bubbles in each pane of the antique window glass. In the 1980s, the same decade when Dad was bushwhacking around looking for cellar holes, we kids, my sister Lynette, my brother Owen, and I, were treated to the soothing sounds of his fiddle and piano music many evenings as we were drifting off to sleep, much like the young Taggart, I imagine. His interest in history and his artistic creativity was woven into the fabric of our childhoods in other interesting ways. When I was old enough to sit at his booth at the Sunapee Craft Fair, I remember selling dozens of copies of a game he produced by hand called Celtic Realm. He had cut up a print of one of his wood engravings that depicted symbols from a 9th century illuminated manuscript, the Book of Kells, and made it into the base of an adapted version of one of the oldest known board games from ancient Mesopotamia. Again, I thought nothing of how so many hours of my childhood were spent playing an ancient board game remixed by my dad. As I got a little older, though, it started to dawn on me how much of a privilege it was to have him as my dad. Sure, it was frustrating to us kids that we were so often discouraged from bothering him in his back workroom in the house. But maybe there was something special happening in our midst. One such epiphany was an unforgettable Christmas morning when we kids went to look under the tree. Leading up to that Christmas, we had gotten 2 repeated PSAs from Mom and Dad. The first was the familiar admonishment, "Don't go in Dad's workroom without asking." And the second, even more dispiriting, that this was going to be a somewhat modest year for gifts. Reaganomics had not been kind to artists like our dad. More of a siphon than a trickling down. Aside from stockings, in fact, that morning there appeared to me maybe just 1 or 2 gifts for each family member. We opened them all until there was just 1 gift left, labeled with all 3 kids' names from Dad. 2 heavy tissue paper wrapped rectangles. Inside the first, a little wooden box chock full of tiny treasures, carefully fitted in colorful miniature baskets and bins. Tiny bundles of silk flowers, birchwood pegs hand carved into inch-long beaver sticks, shiny red wooden apples, a little box containing tiny cut panes of window glass with smooth sanded edges and a single bubble in each. The second rectangle was a large laminated wooden custom word game he had built in his back room, labeled East Hempstead Treasure Hunt. In the coming months and years, we spent countless hours rolling the dice to move our little pawns around that board that was our neighborhood. Up North Road to gather beaver sticks and that board gravestone roadings for 4 points each. Across Old Settlers Road to collect apples from the Elder's Orchard for 3 points each. And back to the house via Forest Road, where those silk wildflowers, worth an incredible 5 points each, were one of the last items to collect. Our little colored baskets brimmed with tantalizing treasures to tally, and my little mind hummed with pride at our dad's genius and loving generosity. Today, as we honor the gift of his musical contributions to the world, I thank you all for taking the time to reflect on this personal story of a dad's gifts to his young children, and encourage you to reflect on a time when Randy's mastery of traditional music may have enriched your own life. Thank you.
Okay, you got your hands forward. You got your arms crossed over. Great. These two gents, Alan and left, once and a half around. Hang on to that left hand, and with your partner, start promenade. Across to the other side with butterfly whirl. Ladies start a whole hay, pass by the right. Gents go in and pass by the right. When you meet your partner where you started that hay, balance and swing. Squeeze across for a right through. We have a courtesy turn. And a roll away with a half sachet with your partner there. Into a right-hand star, same four, right-hand star, 3/4 round until two new jets see each other in the middle to start the dance with that Allen and left, once and a half. Everybody there with two new jets? Almost, there you are. All right, come on back one place. It's a dance by Amy Can. I think she currently lives in Vermont, called Sweet Music. The tune is Will's Jig, written for Will Miller by his dad Randy. so we have a little bit more.
So, thank you very much for listening so carefully to the speakers. I'm not going to have Sarah Bauer come up and talk a little bit about Randy's, a few of Randy's other musical and artistic endeavors. I think it's has something to do with going to England. I'm not sure. Oh, yes, slight change in schedule. Jane Borsakowski, who I happen to know is James Bragg. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Sarah will be right up. Don't go away. So just my most obvious impressions, but worked with him, an accomplished, versatile musician on fiddle, accordion, piano. He knows so many tunes in different genres, especially New England, Irish, Scottish tunes, etc. He has published, as you know, a bunch of terrific books that contain at least a portion of some of the tunes he knows or has composed. The wonderful thing about Randy is that he is great fun to play music with. He manages to lead Irish sessions with a fount of tunes at his disposal and with unfailing encouragement and respect for other musicians. His very strong rhythmic style and beautiful tone draws you right in. You may not know this, but I have home movies of him playing at our wedding in Newcastle, New Hampshire in 1981 with Peter over there, who's still married. They're 16mm movies that my father took, so unfortunately there's no sound. But I can report that they told me that they had a new waltz for us, and the name of the waltz was Amelia by Bob and Flo. The first time I ever heard the tune, and they played it very nicely. So I'm grateful to have had the privilege of playing with you, Randy, and thanks for all the music and good times.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bowen, and I can't remember not knowing Randy. I mean, it just seems like even when he's a little older than me, not that much, but he was always on the scene with Canterbury Orchestra, and then in the 70s, my dad, who was a publisher, hired Randy to illustrate a couple of books. Well, the first one was called More Than Land by Heman Chase, who was from East Alstead, Chase's Mill, right? And Randy, can you tell me or tell us how you got into wood engraving real fast? Because I'm fuzzy on that detail.
It was when I was living in Boston and got curious about the old illustrations that you would see in books. You know, who did those? How were they done? So I read the entire section on wood engraving at the Boston Public Library. And there happened to be a sculptor, wood sculptor, living right next door. And he had these engraving tools, and those weren't the right tools for him because he was doing big sculptures, you know. So he heard that I was interested in, he gifted me these tools, and I still have them today.
Wow.
So Randy, what was your first engraving? I remember.
My first engraving, I had a deck of cards and there was a Scottish bagpipe on it, so I did the, you know, with a bag and all.
No, sir. There's two women over there wearing t-shirts with his engraving.
That's right. So Teresa and Sarah are wearing two of his early wood engravings. Well, it's the same as one, A Time to Dance, that he did for Dick Neville's book, A Time to Dance, and that's become sort of iconic in the dance world. So, but in '75 he did this book with Heman Chase, and trying to make this quick, my mother's cousin in England was married to a man named Ian Bain, who was a piper, Northumbrian piper, also the head of the Tate Gallery publication department. And he would come over to America every May to go to the museums conference, and but he would always come to us and play his pipes. And so, you know, all of a sudden we all had all this Northumbrian music coming in, but then Ian and Randy discovered their mutual love of wood engraving, because Ian was the foremost expert on a man named Thomas Bewick, who was probably the preeminent wood engraver in England in the late 18th, early 19th century. And anyway, so they struck up a friendship. Randy and Kathy went over to England and then to Scotland, and Randy got a set of pipes, and you know, it was just a really wonderful, wonderful, you know, friendship there. And Ian introduced tunes to the canon, and you know, we played Farewell to the Creeks and things like that. And I got to take Randy's wood engravings, and because I took over my dad's publishing company, and put them back into another book by Judd Hale. So we're keeping the wood engraving going, but I feel like I've known Randy in two worlds, you know, and the world of wood engraving is a small one. And Randy, Herbert Waters, Nora Unwin are the preeminent wood engravers in New Hampshire. So I think, you know, look for his stuff, because it's just beautiful.
Thank you, sir.
And now I've asked Teresa to come up, and I know her as a dancer exclusively, and I've asked her to just give her thoughts about Randy from a dancer's perspective.
I'm a dancer that later learned to play a little fiddle, but I'm first and foremost a dancer. And I've known Randy since I was a teenager, trying to figure out how to get a ride to a dance, because my parents wouldn't let me hitchhike with my brother together. And Randy was a little older. He had not much, I mean, not at all today, but you had some sort of transportation, and you actually got paid to go to dances and plays. Little did I know that this fabulous music I was hearing wasn't the normal. Like your son said, you think that's what it is. And I have a digitized recording of a Duke Miller dance, which Duke says at some point, if you're wondering why the Miller brothers aren't here, they're out on the West Coast playing some festival out there. And the other thing I want to say about Randy is he's also an outstanding dancer. And there are a lot of musicians that can't dance for shit. I remember when I was in college, one of the early Thanksgiving Eve dances. It was in Walpole, and you were probably calling it Glorious Hall. Brattleboro Brass was playing. There were more men there I wanted to dance with than there were dances. But Randy was one of them, and I just enjoyed dancing with you so much. And between the music and the dancing and the woodcuts of New England rural scenes, I feel like Randy's one of the keepers of our tradition, and we are so lucky.
Okay, thank you all for coming through.
He wants to talk. He said, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Anything else?
I know everyone wants to dance, and good Lord, I want to be playing music, but thank you for your patience. We're almost done, and then we'll do one more dance. This is my good friend, drove over from the Ithaca, New York area today in the snowstorm. Tom Hodgson was a founding member of my band, Celtic Clatter, back in, I don't know, 15 years ago.
I want to represent those who have had the good fortune of being on the road with us fellow. And I noticed there's some of them from the 85 trip to Europe with the Green Mountain Volunteers, Steve and Ann. And as I said, he was a wonderful diplomat. Wherever he went, he represented New Hampshire's traditional music and his own music very well throughout all the cities across the country that we went to. And it was also true throughout Europe, where we went with the Green Mountain Volunteers. However, the diplomacy stopped at the border. We were stopped on the border of Austria, and at that time it was called Czechoslovakia, but I think it was the Czech Republic. And there was a very efficient border guard with an AK-47 that stopped our bus. And rather than being intimidated, Randy and I went out and threw a baseball to one another. And one of the my throw, he has a rifle arm, dead accurate. I was a little more on the wayward side. So I threw one that went past this barbed wire fence. and the guard was standing there daring us to cross that fence. He had no qualms at all to walk over and pick up the ball. And I thought he was going to toss it to the gully, but the second border crossing story happened in Victoria, BC. We were coming up from having played the dance in Olympia, Washington, and we were going to play a dance in Victoria. And we had a car full of product, carefully buried in the back of the car. And we did not, at that time, we didn't have the prescience to know that we needed a work permit to go across the border. And the guard was a very wonderful English gentleman, and they're very polite in BC, particularly in Victoria. And as he was going through the layers, we were becoming more and more anxious as it was getting down to the lowest level, which was where all the product was, which was mostly his tune books. And it was obviously we were just not friends visiting, but we were a touring band. And as he got to the penultimate lever, he said, "Oh, pudding time." And he walked away. So we were good. But then as we were coming into town, getting to the dance, we stopped at a light, and he was in the adjacent car to us, and one of our bandmates handed him, wanted to give him a CD. So anyway, I will say seriously, this man is beloved throughout the country. And as I said, I've benefited by being, in his shadow, or reflected light, whatever you want to call it. But and I'm very honored to be here today to join you all in celebrating his wonderful contributions to traditional music and dance. Thank you.
I'm sorry, one I cannot refuse Dudley Lockman, who has a brief story.
So Randy and myself and Peter Urensky and Lynn Cornelius all say the same birthday, February 7th. It's coming up. Yeah. One time the dancers, this must have been back about 34 years ago, some of the dancers that were coming around the dancers challenged the Canterbury Country Dance Orchestra to a baseball game. And so Jack Parrott got up, he was the first one up and he had a home run. And then Randy got up and hit a home run. And I got up and struck out. And, well, anyway, we creamed it. We beat him. Didn't we?
Zero memory of
That's it.
So that's it. We're going to do the last dance.
Jack, tell your story. Come on. About the deer. Come on.
I can't tell that story. I'll tell it to you later. Next year.
Go ahead, Jack, go ahead.
I can't tell the garage, Jack.
It takes too long. We were driving up through Vermont. Randy and he was driving my car. It was an old Chevy, and the right tire I knew was bald. So we're driving up there, and I'm sensitive about that tire. When I go to sleep, it's a warm summer day, my head's resting against the door or window. And all of a sudden I hear this big, I'm asleep, and I had this big explosion. I wake up and I'm ready for the car to go off the road, because it's the front car. And no, we just keep going 70 miles an hour straight ahead. And I say, Randy, what? He says, Jack, I think we hit a deer. And so I looked back and sure enough, there was a deer. This is on Route 89 going up to Vermont. There's a deer and there's some dogs that must have been chasing it that are on it, and their car is stopping. So Randy says, should we stop? And I say, nah, let's just keep going. So we go on a little ways, and I'm looking up on the dashboard, and I see this tooth about that long that looks like it was in the museum. You know, dry and clear. And I said, Randy, is that your tooth? And he says, no. And I said, well, where did the deer hit? And he says, well, it hit the side of the car. So I look, and the first thing I look out, and you know, those old cars where you put the key in, it was raised a little, about the size of a quarter. And I saw some deer here and there. And I said, it hit the side of the car. And he goes, yeah. And then I look at the window where it goes up and down, you know, in those old cars, and there's all this buttery stuff in there with deer hair right above my head. And I said, Randy, the deer must have hit right above my head. And he goes, yeah. And I said, that nearly killed me. You know, if I had been a little taller, the deer had been a little shorter, that would have been me. So everything settles down, and we drive a little further. Oh, I get a bloody nose. This drop of blood comes down right at my elbow, and I rub it off. A little while later, then another drop. So I rub it off, and I turn to Randy and I say, Randy, you got a bloody nose? And he's looking at me, and we see this drop of blood come down from the roof. This is an absolute true story, beginning to end. So we both look up, and there's a little splotch of like red jelly right in between us with a trail of blood. So we turn around and look, and there in the back seat, looking up at us, is the deer's head. So there you go. That's not even over here. Everything is said, everything I do.
My heart still goes out to that too.
Yeah, over here. So the only last thing I can say really is, you heard everybody. And I hope you can rest assured that your commitment to contradance, the contradance music, and the musicians, past and present, is not unnoticed and not unappreciated.